At the end of last episode, we were left with a choice. What do we do with the Yaki ship we had just acquired? We needed the data on the ship's nav computers to track where it had been, to track its origins back to where the Yaki were. We could give it to Bo-Katan, our Boron friend back at G.O.N Industries HQ, or the Terran Protectorate. While keeping this data within G.O.N's hands would have been beneficial, it would undermine our core objective, reaching potential ally status with the Protectorate. Also, the Terrans seemed concerned about the Yaki, and after what I had seen of the Yaki and what they were capable of, I too had concerns and did not want to be in this fight alone. The Terran Protectorate were ecstatic when I brought the Yaki ship to them, and they were more than happy to tear the ship down to get to this navigational data deep inside of it. I half expected the Terran Protectorate to launch a full-on invasion into Savage Spur 1. Once they learned the Yaki were last operating out of that system, it would have matched their MO. However, it surprised me when instead they asked G.O.N Industries to scout out the system, and gifted us a very interesting gift to do it with. A Terran-made medium gunship Katana. Not only was this a ship that represented the backbone of Terran engineering, but they also informed me that the Katana was outfitted with what they believed was a signal masking program they had found on the Yaki ship. The Yaki program should, in theory, mask the Katana to look either Xenon or Yaki, depending on who was nearby. This was fantastic news. Yet it also showed a possibility on how the Yaki were surviving so deep in Xenon space where even the fleets of G.O.N Industries and the Terran Protectorate had been pushed back. This was incredibly advanced technology. Even more advanced technology than the Terrans. We would have to proceed with caution. Outside of the Yaki, much of the same was going on within G.O.N Industries, which was not a good thing. The anti-pirate task force had to be relocated to Second Contact 2 Flashpoint, not to fight on the front lines, but to deal with the pirates taking advantage of the chaos and harassing my mining ships now pushing into the system. The First and Second Fleet were under constant attack, with barely a chance to catch their breath. The system, Second Contact 2 Flashpoint, had fallen into a stalemate. The Holy Order of Pontifex was unable to push in and retake the system. However, our forces were just only able to hold them back, lacking the ability to push forward. Morale was running short, especially amongst the fighter pilots. You were considered a veteran if you survived a week. The life expectancy of a fighter pilot was averaged at 2 or 3 battles. The new and the green were teaching the new and the green, and everyone was tired and exhausted. The crew grew used to falling asleep to the sounds of alarms, laser rounds, and distant explosions. Change was needed, but what could be done? In an attempt to alleviate G.O.N forces some, it was determined a feasible option was to build a defense platform near the Holy Order gate. A plot was purchased, and construction would soon be underway. This may not solve the problem, but if anything, it would give the men and women of G.O.N something to look forward to. Back at the newly acquired Katana, which was now called Desi by the ship captain and crew, the ship was given control over the expeditionary fleet Osiris. This was a precaution. While the Terran Protectorate seemed to be forthcoming in this quest, I was still hesitant. The Yaki masking software was untested. A lot could go wrong, and the last place I would want for this to happen would be deep in Xenon-infested space. A test was in order. It was time to see if this ship could truly do everything the Protectorate were saying it could. Desi was flown to Getsu-Fun. A space freeway exit there was notorious due to its connectivity to a neighboring Xenon-controlled system. This would be a perfect area to see if the ship was capable of masking its signal or not. Honestly, color me shocked. The crew of the Desi stood in disbelief as all sensors showed the ship running a Xenon signal. This was incredible. Not only could we look Xenon on sensor, but the program recognized if Xenon or Yaki were nearby, switching the signal automatically. But before the crew could celebrate, a problem was quickly realized. When we were masked as Yaki or Xenon, Desi's communication would be cut off from the rest of G.O.N Industries. This was a major issue when Desi was in control of the expeditionary fleet. The fleet would attempt to follow Desi, however they were unable to communicate or receive orders from them. This almost led to the fighter descending fury and the expeditionary fleet being destroyed. While on Desi, I was unable to also order any ships in to help this fighter, nor was I able to tell the fighter to retreat. This complicated the matter. While on the scout mission in the Desi, I would lose control of all G.O.N Industries. I would be unable to coordinate my fleets or adjust my stations, so the scout mission would have to be direct and precise. Any waste of time could be disastrous, especially during an ongoing conflict. A wing leader was placed in charge of the expeditionary fleet of Cyrus, and the fleet was sent back to friendly territory. The gunship Desi would have to push in alone due to this complication. However, nothing could be done about it, and the crew nervously proceeded forward. There it was. The jump gate leading to Xenon space from Hatikva's Choice 1. The defense platform Leonidas valiantly holding. The dam against the Xenon which continually exited the gate. The gate we were about to enter. The last friendly thing we would see for some time.
Take us in slowly, helmsman.
Yes, sir. Make an entrance in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Status update.
Sir, we are green across the board. The Xenon, they don't see us as a threat, Captain.
That is good news. Engineering power to the thrusters. The less time we spend here, the better. Time to move. Navigation, find us a route to Savage Spur 1.
Last gate to Savage Spur 1, sir. Make an entrance in 5, 4, 3, 2. Captain, something is wrong. Xenon are showing up right across all sensor reads. They're coming for us.
Evasive maneuvers. We need power to shields and weapons immediately. We're not going to be able to outrun them. Prepare for incoming fire.
The Desi and her crew had made it, but the ship had severe hull damage and no shields, and as the smoke cleared, something became apparent. We were not alone. A Yaki QRF drifted nearby, observing us. The Yaki finally made contact with us.
You will follow us outside the Dwarf station. Do not flee. Death will only ensue.
Readings showed their station to be nestled between two Xenon stations. The crew of the Desi had no choice, however. With the ship slowly falling apart, they had no option but to comply. Once aboard the Yaki station, we were taken to a Yaki agent who introduced herself as Kendai or Kanik. The name was familiar to us. Her name had come across G.O.N investigators' tables before in the Obelisk case. She was known to have been communicating with Obelisk before his first initial attack on the Terran Protectorate. When we mentioned this to her, she surprisingly admitted to being happy Obelisk was dead. She explained Obelisk had gone insane. If we had not noticed, the Yaki were heavily implanted with augments. These were not for looks or style. They were implanted with Xenon hardware. The hardware had different effects on different people, and the more and more one augmented themselves, the more they were likely to lose sight of who they were. This is what happened to Obelisk, and in his insanity, he had started a war with the Protectorate that the Yaki were not able to fight. The augmentation was a necessary evil in the eyes of the Yaki. The Xenon augmentation served a specific purpose. The Yaki did it out of a need for survival. It helped them blend in with the Xenon, or at least gave them the chance to. but its true worth in their eyes was it gave the Yaki a chance to use the Xenon as a bulwark from the rest of the factions, since they did not have the ability to do it themselves. Kende also mentioned her people were slowly dying and going extinct. They were trapped here, in a dying system that was nothing but a wasteland, surrounded by Xenon that could easily turn on them, constantly being hunted by the Protectorate, being forced to scavenge and pirate to survive. The Yaki were on the brink of a civil war themselves, the Hardliners, a faction that believed in isolation, pirating, pillaging, augmenting, survival through the old traditions of hardship, versus those who wished for a chance at a better life, to break away from the life of thievery and destruction, to branch out and to learn to adapt in a universe full of trade and growth. This was all very interesting, but when asked why she was telling us all this, she explained she felt that she could trust us. When asked why, she brought in a familiar face. Haley Shinaman, the Terran wingman lost in the early interactions with Obelisk. Haley allowed us to go back to the Desi and get it repaired while he explained his situation. Apparently, after his encounter with Obelisk, he had wound up knocked out and unconscious. He had drifted in space before being picked up by the Yaki, who brought him in, and as he explained, not out of the kindness of their hearts, but to study him. After he had proved himself to be useful, they decided to augment him and allow him to fly for the Yaki. He then informed us of some terrifying news. The reason we were truly brought here was because the Yaki knew we were affiliated with the Terran Protectorate due to our ship make and model. They were wishing for us to be used as a pawn of theirs to destroy the Protectorate since we were trusted by them. Outside, not too far from their station, sat a large, unique-looking Xenon station. This station was a Xenon signal amplifier. The Yaki had been using it to push attacks into Terran space by placing nav beacons, expanding the Xenon signal amplifier's range. This was what Obelisk had been doing. Behind the scenes, the Hardliners were wanting G.O.N Industries to leave a new trail of nav beacons right into the heart of the Terran Protectorate space, allowing the Xenon to move in and destroy the Protectorate in Sol, saving the Yaki from the Protectorate. Haley, despite having a soft spot for the Yaki and realizing that not all Yaki were bad, could not allow them to do this. He and a small group of Yaki wishing to be free from the Hardliners and their suffering in the wastes were willing to attempt to destroy the Xenon amplifier signal station. While this would get rid of the one true weapon the Yaki had against the Protectorate, it would also force the Yaki to have to rely on another way to survive, perhaps putting the option of them leaving their isolated state on the table. This would be suicide, however, for Haley and his non-isolationist allied Yaki. If the Xenons surrounding the station did not kill them, the Hardliners would. No, another option would have to be utilized. Also, the Terran Protectorate were eagerly awaiting our return to report on the Yaki. What would we tell them? If we told them Yaki possessed the ability to send Xenon into Sol and destroy them, the Terran would send a battle fleet in to destroy the Xenon signal amplifier with no hesitation. While this might solve the problem, the Protectorate would also use the opportunity to wipe the Yaki out of existence. No, despite the Yaki preying on trade routes, this was not a death warrant. Many within their ranks wished to escape that life, wishing to no longer have to screw Xenon tech into their newborn babies just so it can survive in the wastes, having the looming threat of death every moment of their lives, empty tables of food, never knowing when the next meal may come in. Many wished to experience normality. This is when it struck me. I had a solution that could benefit all parties involved. However, I would have to play my cards right, and if I didn't, it could spell disaster for G.O.N Industries. The gunship Desi returned to Terran Protectorate space. Here we informed the Protectorate we had made contact with the Yaki. However, we informed them the Yaki were disorganized. The Terran Protectorate, as I had suspected, informed us that if this was the case, they would no longer need to keep a battle fleet on standby. The Terran Protectorate had been ready to strike at the Yaki if they posed any threat. However, since they did not, the fleet was no longer needed. While this was a sigh of relief, it was brief, because the next part of my plan had to play out perfectly or else the Terran Protectorate would see me as traitorous. I had told them the Yaki were no threat. This would only be true if I destroyed the Xenon signal amplifier the Yaki had control over myself. Another surprise came from the Terran Protectorate. As I was leaving, they informed me, for my service, they were going to gift me a junked sin called the Delilah's Swan Song. They figured I deserved something, and since the ship was going to be scrapped anyway, figured I would have a use for it. And that I did, because it would be assigned to the First Fleet. The fleet I would be using to push into Xenon space to destroy the signal amplifier. The Xenon signal amplifier was well defended by the Xenon. Using only Haley and his Yaki friends would get us nowhere. The only chance we had to destroying it was to bring in some additional firepower. So the First Fleet was gathered. Desi was docked onto the carrier Carthage, and the fleet was ordered forward towards Hatikva's Choice 1. So many risks hung over G.O.N Industries' head, all leading to calamity. If we failed to destroy the amplifier, the Xenon could destroy Sol and the Terran with it. The Terran could find out we had not been forthcoming with them and declare us an enemy of the state. The Holy Order could attack while the First Fleet was away, destroying the Second Fleet and recapturing Second Contact to Flashpoint. Or the Yaki could hear what we were planning and turn their amplifier on G.O.N Industries. Yet this needed to be done. As First Fleet flew through Argon Prime, the first time the fleet had been back in the system for what seemed ages, a bittersweet moment overcame us. This was freedom, safety, progression. We had a longing for home, but this reminded us of what we were fighting for, and what we wanted others to be able to experience as well. First Fleet caught a glimpse of laser fire in the distance as it began to near the defense platform Leonidas. As if the Xenon knew we were coming, they were sporadically sending groups of light and medium ships out of the jump gate. The defense platform stood defiantly against these, quickly mopping up the Xenon ships and opening a gap for the First Fleet to push through the jump gate. Hesitation would get us nowhere in this moment. We had been through this gate before a few episodes back. We had slowly trickled in, and the Xenon were able to pick us off one by one. We had retreated like a dog with its tail between its legs. This time, the plan had changed. The plan was to move fast and hard, pushing through any Xenon we came across. We would be outnumbered and outgunned, plus we would be dealing with the hazardous electrical storms plaguing the area. If we stagnated, it would only lead to the loss of life and our doom. The time to go was now or never.
Entering system. Tharka's Cascade.
The First Fleet entered Thraka's Cascade 15 and was immediately set upon by a Xenon blockade. The blockade consisted of a Xenon Branch 9 Destroyer K and an attack group of smaller support craft. The capital ship behemoths were ordered to lay down suppressing fire into the Class K while the rest of the fleet organized itself. Once my fleet was in position and spread far enough apart from one another, the order to concentrate fire on the Xenon was given. The blockade broke, most likely because our fleet arrival had caught the Xenon off guard, but now they knew we were here, so the order to push to the next jump gate was given. The First Fleet began to traverse the system. The electrical storms in the area began causing interference with our electronics and diminishing our shields. Small and medium-sized ships were ordered into the carriers to be protected from the storms, allowing for the larger shields on the larger ships to take the brunt of the electrical storm. Before we could even break free of the debris field surrounding the jump gate we had entered through, another Xenon attack group was seen on sensors to our northwest. Another Xenon Class K destroyer and support craft were barreling towards the scattered First Fleet. A firing line was attempted from the First Fleet, however most of my ships had just entered travel mode and overshot the AO. This worked in our favor, however, because although my fleet was scattered, some of my Behemoth-class capital ships had managed to drop out of travel mode behind the Xenon-class K. The Class K was quickly set upon from all sides and destroyed. The fleet was ordered to continue. They could mop up the smaller Xenon ships as they moved. A constant stream of smaller Xenon ships were seen coming. If we stopped to fight every single one, we would be worn down and destroyed. First Fleet entered Thraka's Revenge 17 to an abnormal stillness within the system. Dizzy had earlier scouted through the system, cutting right through the mid of it. This had revealed a single Xenon station. This station was the only thing in between First Fleet and the jump gate to the next system. It was determined that the First Fleet would use the scouted route to proceed. If the fleet was able to activate their travel drives, they would be able to skirt right past the Xenon station, skipping it altogether. Even so, a problem emerged. The fleet had activated the travel drives at different times, which meant as the ships within the First Fleet began traveling past the Xenon station, the ships traveling past would trigger the Xenon to deploy small attack craft and defense drones. These ships would sprawl out like a large fishing net, catching the ships that had activated their travel drives later than the others. While these drones and smaller ships were unable to cause any damage to the lagging larger ships of the First Fleet, the escort fighters to these ships were in a different situation. Before I was able to get the fighter escorts to escape the Xenon net, 3 fighters were engulfed by the swarm of Xenon drones. This brought our fleet numbers to 29 ships, an unfortunate loss, a loss we could not repeat if we wished to have a chance at dealing with what was up ahead. First Fleet entered Matrix number 79 Bravo to its empty vastness. The fleet would again travel to the next jump gate, this time in a close formation. Our strategy of pushing fast and hard had paid off. Outside of a handful of smaller Xenon craft, the Xenon had been unable to muster a force to stop us from crossing through its territory. With the smooth traversal of the Matrix number 79 Bravo complete, the First Fleet had reached its objective, the jump gate leading to Savage Spur 1. Once in, First Fleet had to act quickly. If we weren't cautious, we could get stuck, sandwiched between the Xenon. The Xenon could just as easily attack us from the systems we had just progressed through, and we know the Xenon signal amplifier station was well defended. We would need to be unambiguous in our assault. As First Fleet started to push into Savage Spur 1, Haley Shinoman and his group of Yaki joined us. I could tell in their voices they were ecstatic to see G.O.N Industries arrive with the First Fleet. Nevertheless, as we moved closer to the Xenon amplifier, they fell silent, nervous of what was ahead. The Xenon saw our advance, and at this point I am sure suspected what our objective was. They began sending squadrons of Class M, N, and P-sized ships. To counter this, the First Fleet was placed in a tight formation, with the capital class behemoths taking an escort position in the front, carrier in the middle, and the support ships in the back with the Sin taking up the rear security. This formation allowed all ships to be able to support one another with covering fire, and allow a safety bubble for our fighters to operate in with constant firing support. It was set on that the gunship Desi would be used to scout out the Xenon amplifier. With its signal masking still working, this would give us an opportunity to get up close and to get a quick view on what was to come. As suspected, Desi reported 2 Xenon Class K destroyers and support craft, lumbering defensively around the Xenon signal amplifier station. Desi was then recalled back to the fleet. Knowing what was to come, the First Fleet was able to set up a firing line with the behemoths. So when the Class K destroyer began to prod our fleet as we neared, the behemoths were able to make expeditious work of them with overwhelming bombardments from their forward batteries. The attention of the First Fleet now turned to the amplifier station. The order came in to rain fire upon it. As the first of our rounds began hitting the amplifier, reports came in from our Yaki friends. The Yaki hardliners were boarding their ships in order to attack us, in hopes of stopping our siege on the amplifier. However, before any of the hardliners were able to reach us, the station was encompassed with flames and was torn apart utterly. First Fleet had been victorious in its objective. The Xenon signal amplifier laid a smoldering wreck, but now questions stood. Would the Yaki see this as liberation or a declaration of war? The First Fleet held steady as contact was made with the Yaki. The Yaki felt betrayed and were wrathful, yet as we explained to them that we had told the Terran Protectorate that they were no threat, and the Terran Protectorate had deemed them too disorganized and small to be a menace, the Yaki's tone changed. While many within their ranks, such as the hardliners, would see this still as betrayal, most of the Yaki saw this as salvation. The Yaki had been dying out in isolation, and now had a chance to push out in order to survive. They now could do so in a means of relative safety, now that the Terran Protectorate had turned their attention elsewhere. The hardliners had lost their power with the destruction of the amplifier station. They did not have the capacity to wage war or have the means to hold a sword over the heads of the Terran Protectorate and other factions. They could not enforce their ideology and had lost their influence amongst the Yaki. Change was finally an option for the Yaki. However, if they would seize this opportunity or fade into the wastes like before was up to them. It had to be their choice, but the helping hand of G.O.N Industries was always extended if they needed it. The First Fleet was then sent home for some much needed R&R. 4 more fighters had been lost. With how risky this mission had been for those within the First Fleet, many viewed this as minor, and would celebrate those who they had lost once home. They had dived headfirst into the gates of hell and made it out in one piece. This day had been a historic victory. Thank you for watching. This was a bit of a longer video, so I appreciate you watching and being patient with its release. This was a very strange rabbit hole we went down. My goal was just to get close to the Terran Protectorate and stop a possible war between them and the Argon. However, we ended up chasing and hunting down the boogeymen of the X-Universe, the Yaki. G.O.N Industries would be keeping a watchful eye on the Yaki. We would maintain contact with Kandai or Kandik, I think was her name, and would do our best to support them if they needed it. The Xenon signal amplifier station, while being a powerful weapon, had also been a jail cell for the Yaki. With it gone, the Terran Protectorate would no longer have a reason to waste resources on the Yaki, while the Yaki now could expand and grow, escaping from this desolate waste that they had essentially inhabited. Our friend Haley Shinoman was truly grateful for us and our help. He, however, found himself an outcast. He was no longer safe with the Yaki due to the hardliners wanting him dead because of his hand in the events that had just transpired. And the Terran Protectorate would not take him back due to him being pretty much augmented with Xenon tech. So G.O.N Industries was more than happy to welcome Haley into our ranks, and hopefully he would find a home amongst our people. Again, thank you. I want to shout out my supporters. Know that you guys are the backbone of G.O.N Industries. To our first G.O.N ship captain, Red Dog 7, your capital ship, the Scarlet K9 7, is doing good. It survived the push into Xenon space and had actually helped a lot with our issues in dealing with the Yaki. G.O.N frigate officer Desgard, UK, your frigate Desi was part of the expeditionary fleet, but also, as we can see, the ship was kind of the star of the episode. Once First Fleet actually returns home, your frigate will return back to the expeditionary fleet. And also Red Dog and Desgard, you guys never told me the names of your ships, so these are the names that I chose. If you don't like them, just let me know on Discord and I can change them. G.O.N frigate officer Joel Braz, your frigate the RCHF Neutrophil is doing good with the anti-pirate task force. Your ship is currently in second contact fighting off the pirates chasing our mining vessels. G.O.N frigate officer Jesse Louis Favela Vela, your frigate, the Little Lady, is doing good with the first fleet. It was actually the only frigate brought in with the first fleet, and it survived the whole ordeal. To my G.O.N fighter pilots, Dulcina, your fighter, the Romulus, is still in second contact. It is actually a true veteran of the Holy Order War. It's survived so long. G.O.N fighter pilot Peter, your fighter, the Descending Fury. Your ship was almost actually destroyed when I lost control of the Expeditionary Fleet when I was controlling the Desi. You can actually see it being towed around by a frigate in the Expeditionary Fleet because I didn't want it to get destroyed, so close call there. Thank you all again for your support and help. If you want to join the ranks of G.O.N Industries, I have a Patreon and this new YouTube membership thing. Check it out if you want to support. The only reason I am able to do these videos is because of supporters like you. So thank you so much. I also have a Discord link down below. Come play some Arma with us or just hang out, share screenshots, tell grizzled war stories. It's a good time. YouTube algorithm only works if people like, share, sub, dislike. I'm fine with all the above. So I guess let's feed the beast and do one of the above, please. Either way, I'm just grateful you stopped by to watch. You're all fantastic and beautiful. The world is what we make of it, so let's continue to make the world beautiful. Stay strong, choose the right, and remember to love one another. Peace.